questions
Yep.
that listeners have emailed in prior to the webinar. Now, Leslie asks, do abusers show any potential warning signs?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and you know, and it's one that could go either way. One, you
I
can
think
really
they're all pretty hard, just quietly.
you can do two things. You can profile the character of the person if you really wanted to, and if you're able to do so, and look at stages of their development and their behaviours, and you know that can always be a good predictor of what they might be like. But you know, the best person to talk to about perpetrating violence is actually the victim. And you know, he comes home and he has a set routine, or he comes home and he does this, he comes home and he does that. Because you've got to understand, it's not always going to be a violent encounter with domestic violence or family domestic violence. It is the power and control, it is the manipulation, it is the male privilege stuff as well. And so, can we determine, you know, when he's going to abuse again? I guess if a person is violent and uses violence, and I think there's some precursors that you could look for, and that is often linked to stresses, triggers, things that are going on in the home, financial stress, all that sort of stuff. But they're excuses, you know, that's not taking responsibility. But if you want to look for the excuses in terms of the prelude to the violence, then those triggers may be things to look for. But usually, these patterns of behaviour have been entrenched in the individual for a long, long time. They're not, you know, last week he was a good guy and then suddenly he turns violent. No, these behaviours are pretty much been a part of that person's life for a while. And can you sort of pick it? Well, it's hard. Usually, like I said, usually only when it comes to crisis point that we start working at this end. And you have to go back and back and back and look for patterns of behaviour. Like you have to look at, maybe you can look at family of origin stuff. Maybe you can look at systems theory as well, of how the family systems play a part in the family and domestic violence. Yeah.
I hope that answers your question, Lee.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Tanya.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
What were you going to say? No, go.
I was going to say, if it sort of doesn't answer the question, you just ask it again. Email me if it doesn't, or you know, just talk a little bit more to what you mean around that question, because it's a little bit hard to say, you know, because no individual's the same. I'm sure you can appreciate that. So everyone's going to respond differently or do things differently, and so it really is a system theory and how that individual plays a part in the family system, and what role they have, and it really links into family of origin. So you know what's been culturally okay to do. So yelling and screaming, it might be culturally okay, but hitting might not be. And so if hitting becomes part of that, then what's changed in the family system? And that's the stuff you need to look for. It means you've got to unpack a lot of stuff in order to get to that answer to that question.
Now, Tanya asks, if an abuser abates with domestic violence, but emotional abuse continues, how do you walk the fine line of encouraging their efforts with their domestic violence while counselling the emotional abuse?
Okay.
They're hard questions.
It is a hard question, and it's one that counsellors, I think, in my experience, has always been one of the hardest things to do, is to, you know, we get him to cease physical violence, but then still this emotional stuff comes through. But it really comes down to attitude. And, you know, sometimes I even put this to the guys: if you love your wife, why do you do what you do? And so it's about, if the physical violence is ceasing, excellent. That's a good thing, and that needs to be recognised and validated, absolutely. But I would say to the person then, well, that's only half the job done. And then I'd be saying, this other stuff that you do, this other stuff, like, you know, this emotional manipulation that you do all the time, or making her feel responsible, or making her feel guilty, that's just as bad psychologically as you actually hitting her. Are you aware of that? And educate. Go back to my questions, or go back to the process and start educating them and saying, look, when you say to her, you made me angry, that's actually shifting responsibility. you need to change what you're saying I am angry, and name it why you're angry, and get them to take responsibility for that. And so the fine line is a hard one, because you've got to be measured in how you do that. I appreciate that. But I would say then you still got to work with them to take ownership of their violence or the way they treat the individual according, like if you look at the equality wheel, that's what you want to go for. So how can then we make these changes and aim towards some resemblance of the equality wheel? Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, or gets you thinking anyway.
Yeah. Kevin's email is up on the screen if
Actually,
you need to ask further.
Well, I know you got mine up there. Sorry, I didn't see that. Yeah, you got me. Okay, great. Send them to me.
And your mobile.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Turn it off.
Anyway, no, that's okay. That's okay. It'll only be all good stuff.
I'm sure.
And David also emailed in a question. Now, this is very. This is dealing with ethnicity and cultural sort of. It's a difficult one, like the last two. When working with ethnic groups which are very new to the country, for example, refugees, how do you deal with a male who isn't letting up and the wife doesn't want to leave? Now, I can sort of understand the question, because, yeah, I can imagine that you would see it with refugees.
Yeah, I have to say first up, before I even attempt to answer the question, is that when I had very little experience working in refugee backgrounds. Saying that though, I have done a little bit of work in terms of working with refugee young people, and working closely with an organisation called Assets over here, who work solely with refugees or torture and trauma survivors and things like that.
Sorry, Kevin, you're just breaking up.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me, Kevin?
Yep.
You just broke up the last when you were saying the organisation that you did work for. Could you say that again?
Yeah, I didn't work for them, but I worked with them in terms of some projects, and they're called Assets.
Oh, okay.
And they work with refugee torture trauma survivors. And what I come to understand just from listening is that we are, well, it's probably a little bit of a bunny trail here, but it's a good example of some things that I want to allude to. We organised a program called Drumbeat, and we started playing drums with these kids. And one of the person made a comment, "Oh, these guys should be excellent drummers, and they should be able to play drums and stuff like that." And then one of the workers politely reminded him, saying, "These kids have grown up in a refugee camp, far removed from their culture, say a Sudanese culture or a Congolese culture, or or wherever they come from, and these kids have no idea what it means to be part of that community, let alone part of this community." So we label them Sudanese refugees, but most of these kids have grown up in refugee camps on borders, so they have no idea. So that was in one way I'm trying to say is that often we're confronted with cultural difficulties. Say we're working with a Sudanese group, or we're working with an Aboriginal group, or whatever the case may be. What happens is that we could actually probably get stuck believing that what they're doing is cultural, and it might not be. And so it's really important that when we work with cultural groups, that we talk to cultural people about that. Like I said, I don't come from that sort of training, so I can't fully quantify the question, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But essentially, is this: as a counsellor, there's in our confidentiality agreement, our oaths of confidentiality that we have to sign to, is that if we believe a person is at harm, we have to act. We have to inform our supervisors, or if we're working in private practice, we have to inform the most appropriate authorities, especially if we believe that they're at harm or whatever, or we believe they're capable of doing harm. We have to act in accordance to our oaths of confidentiality and our ethics and our duty of care. So even if was a cultural issue or whether it be a white person, if I felt in my counselling that the woman was at serious risk, I am obligated then to inform somebody that this woman is at risk from this person. And that's probably the only way I can answer that question, because I know that if we look at the religious aspects of it, there's a lot of misrepresentation with religion in terms of relationships. Christianity is often misrepresented as being a misogynist religion, but when you look at the theology and its context and certain scriptures and stuff, what you find, and I can talk from this because of my little bit of my expertise, what we find is that the Bible doesn't teach subservience, women subservient to men. No, it teaches equality that men and women are supposed to have for each other. It's religion that, the political aspects of the religion that, again, the male privilege, the male dominance has made women subservient. And I've heard from Muslim women, just from interviews on television, and so again, it's not the greatest reference, but even in the Quran, domestic violence or violence against women is not tolerated. It's actually a cultural, socio-political, religious aspect. So again, it's really about, if you're confronted with this really complex situation, which it is, and I appreciate it, David, it's simply about, one, you've got to fulfill your oaths of confidentiality and your ethics around that, and secondly, engage with specialists who are trained or who can give you knowledge or train you in that area. But if the woman is at risk of being harmed, then maybe talking to your supervisor is probably the first thing you need to do. Yeah. Hopefully that clarifies my position anyway, and hopefully that gives you some direction with your question.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah. You just breaking up a bit there, sorry.
There's no questions. Oh, I was just saying, yeah, I hope it answers the questions as well. And it doesn't look like we've got any other questions. So, so thank you very much, Kevin, and to everyone who participated and will be getting the recording. And Kevin is actually going to be presenting another webinar with us. I can't think of the date actually, but it's in the future. on adolescence and bullying. So we'll look forward to that. In my diary, it's the 10th.
Okay.
Is that the same as you, Kevin? So it's a 10th. So we look forward to that one as well, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, so thank you very much, and thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Cheers, mate. Thanks. See ya. Bye.